Hey Steelers Nation, it's Joe Rockey. In today's episode, I'm going to break down effectively what I believe the Steelers are not getting viewed as correctly, and that's why there's all of this shade all over this team. And my centerpiece player for this conversation is going to be Mr. Najee Harris, one of my absolute faves. So the Steelers enter 2022 in a big shroud of this team isn't going anywhere. None of the national media liked Kenny Pickett. They thought the Steelers drafted the wrong guy because everyone knew Malik Willis was going to be the best quarterback ever. So something with that. And no one was really on the Trubisky bus, which, granted, that part panned out. But there was so much negativity there. And then we all know how it started the year. Getting swept by the AFC East, which, how did we lose to New England and the Jets? Still, regardless, it all comes down to the fact what goes down, and the national media very quickly discounts the win over Cincinnati in week 1, where basically the defense won that game. So that's the trend. We get to the end of the Philadelphia game, and like I said, ESPN had us projected to be the 3rd pick in the draft at that time. And that's basically the national focus that checked in there. Because once you get to that point of the year, week 10, you're only focusing on the playoff teams and the playoff storylines. And all of that season, the Steelers were from the very far outside trying to reach it in. Almost did it, by the way. They're one Joe Flacco miserable game away from getting in, actually. But point being, the Steelers never got back on the radars. And when I look at this, I'm looking at Najee Harris as a particular example that kind of encapsulates this. Because from that Philadelphia game on, there were 9 games played. Of those 9 games, 6 of them he put over 80 yards. Which, in this modern NFL, is very good numbers. Definitely top 10, and some weeks bordering upon top 5. And that's what we see this growth going upon. And in the 2 division games to end of the year, he put up 111 in the second last week at Baltimore. And he put up 80 in Cleveland in a game that, quite frankly, they pulled him because they wanted to make sure that if we did make the playoffs, he still had some juice. So we look at his worst games in the second half of the year after he was healthy. It was, as Trubisky was throwing all the interceptions at home against Baltimore. Well, he didn't really get a lot of carries. I think he got 12 carries. And we look at his other big where was he type game, and that was at the Colts. And that was one of the ugliest games that I think Steelers Nation wants to forget about the most, as far as the wins at least. So when I look at what Najee's going to be and what is this team going to be, they actually have a similar trend. They have cumulative good numbers, but the average, the per going out this week, how exciting is it going to be? The Steelers aren't built to be an exciting football team in terms of ESPN putting up highlights and blowing up the scoreboard. We're built to be, you ain't scoring on us, and that's the way we like it. And we have an offense that's not going to throw the game away. And those types of teams don't get national love. They want teams that are going to give them a chance to put up 50. They want the Eagles that are winning by 8+ points per game. That's who the national media talks up. And as a result, the Steelers are getting all this shade thrown upon them like they're not going to show up. Now, on this note, specifically looking at Najee's per carry, it's going to go up for a couple of key reasons. First, Broderick Jones is a much better run blocker than Moore. And yes, even if he doesn't come on the field until after the bye week against Baltimore, Najee's overall running game will go up. Second, no matter how you cut it, we're having an upgrade at left guard. Either Dotson is going to be so angry that he got challenged that he is going to evolve into a completely better player and keep his job. Possible. That dude has a lot of anger in him, and when he lets it out, it is very good. But he has the tendency of disappearing and fading away. It's part of him. It sucks, but it's true. When that guy's on, he's the best run blocker on the team. You just don't see it often. And that's where I think bringing in both of the other 2 starting guards we brought to this team really helps. Unfortunately, I think that the older Herbig is the one who's like the least likely to get the gig and ends up being the swing guy when it's all said and done. But maybe Herbig's able to do the transition and start fighting for the center world. We haven't seen him have a lot of snaps at center, but it's not something that's outside of his repertoire either. So the long story short is, you brought in, by making Dotson elevate, assuming he elevates, you brought in better run blockers. And the left side of your line is now going to be able to run much better. Last year, the Steelers really were only effective running to the right, particularly behind Chooks and Daniels. That gap there, they had a little bit of love on outsides. But if they were going to the left with any kind of efficiency, Daniels had to pull. And as soon as Daniels started pulling, it's an immediate tell and everyone crashed on it. And as much as I love Najee, as I told you up front, he's one of my favorites. He is not a speed guy. He is not going to beat you to the edge and outrun you in the way that an Eckler does. What he's going to be is balanced. So if you give him lanes, he's going to be able to run over people. Not Derrick Henry level, but he'll be able to do it in a well above average capacity. And the way to get this line going and the way to get Najee Harris moving, under center runnings, going to each spot on the line and not telling it with pulls. That all is capable with this new line. It does require Kenny to be more mature than Ben and be willing to go under center and to listen to other schemes. It requires Canada to be smart enough to draw them up, which he does during training camp. It just somehow never translates into the games. And if you do that, not to mention the fact you brought in Warren, and you can have some of the best two tight end sets in the NFL. If you do that and your base five is now Johnson, Pickens, Warren, Muth, and Najee, you have the ability to have the most balanced two tight end set in the NFL. This is better in terms of overall talent than the Gronk and Hernandez Patriots, because it is. Granted, Gronk is better than all four of the tight ends together, but Freiermuth has the possibility of getting there. Darnell Washington is the closest person ever to be a physical combine specimen like Gronk. This is the possibility that we have here.